Welcome to the debate. Today, we're delving into, well, really one of the most pressing intellectual property challenges of our time, the intersection of cutting-edge AI music generation and the foundational principles of copyright law. Specifically, we're asking, given the U.S. Copyright Office's firm stance on requiring human authorship for AI-generated works, to what extent can a user providing, say, a simple text prompt to a platform like Suno genuinely claim creative ownership or copyright? Or are their contributions fundamentally limited by the machine's primary role in creation? I'll be arguing for a more expansive view, suggesting that AI acts as a powerful creative amplifier for users.
And I'll be presenting the counterpoint. I'll emphasize the strict legal interpretation of human authorship as it currently stands and highlight the, frankly, significant limitations for raw AI output under existing copyright law. It's a landscape that's, well, fraught with challenges for creators assuming traditional ownership.
Right. So I see AI platforms like Suno not really as replacements for human artists, but perhaps as the, quote, ultimate creative partner and truly a new instrument in the hands of musicians. I mean, consider how artists have always adapted to new technologies, right? The camera didn't kill painting. It sort of freed painters to explore abstraction. The synthesizer didn't eliminate acoustic instruments. It expanded the sonic palette dramatically. AI, I think, is just the latest evolution in this. Users, whether they're, seasoned professionals leveraging decades of musical theory or just individuals with a natural ear and taste, they become curators and directors in this new paradigm. They're sifting through this AI-generated raw marble, so to speak, to find the gold, that perfect melody, that compelling rhythm. Even a seemingly simple text prompt like a sad country song about a lost dog with a banjo solo acts as a critical creative spark. It's a fundamental initial creative decision that guides the AI, enabling rapid prototyping and ideation at really unprecedented speeds. Artists can explore countless possibilities in minutes that might have taken weeks or months traditionally. And, practically speaking, platforms like Suno do grant ownership of generated music to their paid subscribers. Now, while this might be a contractual right within the platform's ecosystem, rather than, a full legal copyright recognized by the USCO, it's still a significant form of control and tangible value for creators operating within that framework.
I understand the appeal of framing AI as this transformative instrument. But the legal reality, particularly here in the U.S., is rather starkly different. The U.S. Copyright Office, the USCO, firmly adheres to what they call the bedrock principle of human authorship. And this isn't just some arbitrary rule. It's established by Section 102A of the U.S. Copyright Act itself and has been consistently reiterated in their compendium, Section 313.2. We saw this principle definitively cemented in that federal court decision, Fowler versus Perlmutter, back in 2023, which affirmed the USCO's refusal to register art created solely by an AI without any human intervention. That case made it unequivocally clear, for copyright to exist, there must be a human author. Now, AI music generation, at its core, it relies on incredibly sophisticated probabilistic modeling through complex mathematical structures, things like variational autoencoders, or VAEs, generative adversarial networks, GANs, and transformers. VAEs learn to encode and decode musical information, allowing them to generate novel variations. GANs use a generator trying to fool a discriminator pushing for more realistic output. Transformers are great at understanding long-range dependencies, so they're good for structured sequences, like music. But these are all fundamentally mathematical machines for generating high-probability patterns. They don't have understanding or intent or emotion. Therefore, a simple text prompt, while maybe a good idea, is legally classified as an unprotectable idea, not sufficient human expression. The AI, not the human, performs the actual creative labor of translating the abstract idea into a tangible melody, harmony, and rhythm. And crucially, Suno's own terms of service, they explicitly state it cannot guarantee that this music will be eligible for copyright protection, despite granting this contractual ownership to paid users. This explicitly highlights the critical distinction between platform terms and actual copyright law, a distinction I think many users often overlook.
Okay, I hear your emphasis on the legal bedrock, but I'm really not convinced that the creative spark of a prompt should be so easily dismissed in favor of the AI's, quote, creative labor. While a prompt may be legally defined as an idea, it embodies the why, right? The initial artistic intent. That specific human direction, a sad country song about a lost dog with a banjo solo, that is what initiates the entire creative process. It sets the emotional tone, the genre, the instrumentation, the entire creative brief. The AI, in this scenario, it's a highly sophisticated tool, yes, but it's executing the user's vision. I'd argue it's somewhat akin to a composer hiring a world-class session musician. The composer provides detailed instructions, maybe even a basic melody line, and the musician, with all their skill and knowledge, brings it to life. The musician's labor is significant, sure, but the composer is still the author of the final piece. The human is still the guiding force, shaping the direction and ultimately the emotional landscape of the output. I mean, if a user spends hours refining prompts, iterating, selecting, aren't they exercising creative control then?
I'm sorry, but I just don't quite buy that analogy, and here's why. The creative labor of transforming that abstract human idea, the genre, mood, instrumentation, into a tangible, fixed musical expression, meaning the specific melody, the specific harmony, rhythm, orchestration, that is entirely performed by the machine's algorithms. The USDRO's guidance unequivocally rejects text prompts as sufficient for authorship precisely because the machine, not the human, generates that unique creative expression. A session musician, well, they bring their own interpretation, their own unique phrasing, their own emotional nuance to a piece. The AI doesn't. The algorithms are learning and generating statistically probable patterns based on vast amounts of training data. They don't possess consciousness or intent. The output isn't really a performance of a human's creative work. It's an original generation by the machine itself. So where do you draw the line then?
I mean, if I simply type make a hit pop song into an AI and it somehow generates something commercially successful, are you suggesting I, having provided that incredibly generic prompt, should automatically be considered the sole author with full copyright protection? That seems like a stretch.
That's a fair challenge, absolutely. And it brings us precisely to the nuance of sufficient human intervention and this concept of thin copyright. Look, I don't believe simply typing make a hit pop song would or should suffice. However, I do challenge let's say, the strictness of what the US COCO currently deems sufficient intervention. The creative process isn't just about the initial generation. It's also about refinement, curation, integration of elements. I'd argue that even nuanced human curation, the selection of preferred outputs, maybe minor but artistically significant edits to a melody or harmony, or the careful integration of AI-generated musical phrases into a larger human-authored composition, that should be recognized. This positions the human as the sculptor of the raw marble provided by the AI. Imagine a sculptor presented with a perfect block of marble. Their art isn't in, creating the marble itself, but in shaping it. The artists develop taste, their vision in selecting and refining the AI's output is in itself a crucial creative act. It's the artistic intelligence applied to the output that I think makes it a work of art deserving of some recognition.
But I come at it from the perspective of the legal standard, which requires substantial creative control. The US SEO's position is actually very clear on this point. They're looking for genuine, demonstrable creative input that goes significantly beyond merely selecting from a machine's outputs or making, superficial tweaks. For sufficient human intervention to occur, the actions must be more akin to structuring them into a complete song with verses, choruses, and a bridge, or perhaps adding original human-performed instrumentation, or significantly editing melodies or harmonies to impart distinct artistic choices. Their guidance explicitly states that just, quote, generating a complete song and making minor tweaks is insufficient. Think of it in terms of the Zarya of the Dawn principle, that graphic novel case. There, the author gained copyright for the text she wrote and the arrangement of AI-generated images within the novel, but, crucially, not for the individual AI-generated images themselves. So at best, what you might be looking at is a thin copyright, meaning protection only extends to the human-authored components, not the raw AI output. So for instance, if you take an AI-generated melody and then you personally write entirely new lyrics, a harmony part, and arrange it with your own human-performed instruments, only those new human-authored elements might be copyrightable. The underlying AI-generated melody itself, that would likely remain in the public domain, essentially open for anyone else to use. It's actually a very high bar for human creative input, not a low one.
Okay, I see why you think that, but let me offer maybe a different perspective on the sort of practical reality of this contractual ownership versus strict legal copyright protection. Because for a huge segment of creators, the current utility of these platforms, even without full USCO copyright, is enormous. For paid subscribers, right, Suno's terms of service state that Suno assigns to you all of its right, title, and interest in, and to any output owned by Suno. Now, this clause allows for commercial use by those paid users. This provides a very real, very practical sense of ownership and control within the platform's ecosystem, and often, crucially, for commercial purposes. Let's be honest, many creators aren't immediately looking to register a federal copyright. They're looking to create content for YouTube, or for advertising jingles, maybe independent film scores, or just content for social media. This contractual framework offers tangible benefits and real value to those creators right now. They can use this music for their projects, they can monetize it, and they operate under the understanding that they have exclusive control over that specific output generated on that platform. It's about enabling creation and commercialization in what is a rapidly evolving digital economy.
And that's a compelling argument regarding the immediate utility, I grant you that. But I'm afraid I have to frame it differently from a, let's say, long-term legal and commercial viability standpoint. This contractual ownership from Suno, when you look at it in terms of broader legal copyright, is what I would frankly call a kind of contractual illusion. If the raw AI output, which is the output, Suno is attempting to assign never actually qualified for copyright protection in the first place due to that lack of human authorship, then there are fundamentally no rights to assign that are defensible against third-party copying outside the platform's terms of service. It's a bit like trying to sell air, legally speaking. Suno's own disclaimer of warranties explicitly states, and this is important, Suno makes no representation or warranty to you that any copyright will vest in any output. This is a crucial detail that I think often gets glossed over.
Furthermore, their terms also highlight that output may not be unique across users, and the service may generate the same or similar output for a third party. Now, that is potentially devastating for any claim of unique ownership. If someone else, maybe even completely inadvertently, generates the exact same melody or progression using the same platform, or perhaps another similar AI, you likely have no legal recourse under copyright law because the original output was never protected to begin with. So yes, the practical benefits are real within the platform's limited sphere, but outside of it, you're on very, very shaky ground if you try to assert exclusive rights based purely on that AI generation.
So just to summarize my perspective, AI, far from diminishing creativity, serves as an incredibly powerful new instrument, dramatically expanding creative possibilities. It allows artists, I believe, to focus on higher-level direction, curation, and perhaps most importantly, the emotional why of their music, while the AI handles the often laborious generation of the raw material. The enduring value of human artistic vision lies precisely in selecting, shaping, and refining that AI output. This isn't really a threat to human creativity, but a continued evolution, much like how the move from hand-copying manuscripts to the printing press transformed literature. It's about leveraging these sophisticated tools to realize a vision faster and in ways previously unimaginable, allowing artists to interpret and express themselves in genuinely novel forms. The creative input, even if it starts with just a prompt, is that essential human element guiding the machine.
And while I certainly acknowledge the remarkable mathematical sophistication of these AI tools, my position remains quite firm.
Current U.S. copyright law unequivocally requires substantial, demonstrable human creative authorship for protection. The user's role, particularly with raw AI output generated from simple prompts, fundamentally remains that of a director, not the author. To achieve copyright protection, significant and measurable creative intervention is necessary, not just initial ideas or minor tweaks. Creators absolutely must be acutely aware of this thin copyright problem and the crucial distinction between the contractual terms offered by platforms and true legally defensible intellectual property rights. To assume full copyright based merely on a prompt or platform terms without that substantial human creative input is, frankly, to risk having no meaningful protection at all.
This discussion really does highlight the ongoing tension, doesn't it, between rapid technological advancement and these established legal frameworks that, well, by their nature, tend to evolve more slowly. It definitely underscores the critical importance for creators to understand not just the capabilities of AI tools, but also the legal realities of how they can best integrate these tools while, hopefully, preserving their unique authorship.
Absolutely. And there is clearly much more to explore in this evolving relationship between human creativity and artificial intelligence. The legal landscape is still very much actively catching up, and future court decisions or perhaps legislative changes will undoubtedly continue to shape this really fascinating domain.